And we are live. JT here. Welcome to the Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you. I want to thank you whether you are tuning in live as we stream into our Facebook community, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're simply listening to audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and just open your mind to new ideas and new ways of being. And my guarantee to you is you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sports, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. Before we hopped on here, we were reminiscing down memory lane and we were sort of connecting the dots to see actually when we last saw each other, face to face, even if it's virtual to start. My guest in the huddle today is a family friend, but again, I really wanted to learn more about her journey to greatness. My guest in the huddle today is the head coach at Columbia University Lions women's basketball program. My guest in the huddle today is Coach Megan Griffith. How are you today, Coach?
I'm great, JT. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure who was more enthused, whether it was myself getting to chat with you and catch up and reconnect with you, or when I mentioned it to my mom, she was enthused as well. So I feel like your mom will probably be the same way as well.
Oh yeah. That's a fact. You know that'll be true. The proud mothers are proud mothers.
Exactly. One of the things, Megan, that I always like to remind myself, and it's a daily practice, is to count your blessings. And I'm a firm believer that the biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So I just wanted to thank you again for blessing me and our community with your time and energy today, and just really enthused for a great conversation and learning more about your journey to greatness.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me, like I said, and I'm excited to start the conversation here.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I often like to remind myself and others is that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what is an interesting fact? I had a coaching colleague that said, we all have our quirks, we all have these things that make us unique and different. And yeah. So I'm curious, what is a interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Oh, wow. That's a great, actually, I have a good fact, I think. I'm actually, like, by nature more introverted of a human, I would say, than like maybe how I'm perceived. I think I do like to be around people and I love the energy that people pass between each other. But like at my core, I could be in my apartment by myself reading a book, on a Sunday afternoon. I don't need to be out and about doing things amongst people. I like my time. So yeah, I think that's a fun fact there.
I love that because I am exactly the same way. Like I am so selfish with me time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you mentioned like just, what is that? If you had an hour today,
yeah,
just me time, is it really just cuddling up with a good book or what's that thing that's on your heart? I'm curious right now.
Honestly, like, I think the one thing I need to do like every day is like move my body in some way. So I like, if it's an hour, I'll probably spend 30 minutes of that trying to get some sort of a workout in. And then, I think that's like how I think that's like what allows me to relax and then think open-mindedly about other things. Mm-hmm. So like if I ever feel like I'm hitting a wall or like a block of some sort, that I'm like very in tune with how I'm feeling in my body. So it's, I think I have to move my body, right? So I would take that hour to do that and then probably unwind in some way, like with whether it's reading a book or a show or just something that I can unplug with that doesn't require a lot of me, if that makes sense after that.
Yeah, and I love it. And what I really heard from you again is that anyone that has played sport or coached sport at a high level understands, like, the power of connecting to your body. And I think as athletes, it's an easy entry point for us, because I think it just puts us in the here and the now. So it's amazing to hear that, you still value and still prioritize that, connecting to your body, prioritizing your health and your wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. It's vital for how we are, what we do and how we move and how we interact with our athletes. I think it's really important. So,
okay. So I'm curious, you've had an interesting journey to greatness, right? You first were a high level athlete, and then, you played, at the university at the highest level. Then you went to pro over in Europe, and then you transitioned into coaching. I was actually watching this, a video you did where you said you're kind of at a cross point at the end of your athletic career. You're kind of figuring what's the next step. So I'm curious, what has been a life lesson that you've taken from sport that you still find yourself applying to your life today?
Yeah, I mean, I think sport is such an amazing vehicle for life lessons, number one. And there's like countless ones that I've had, but I do think the ability to like be adjustable in a moment is really, really critical. And that's something that, like, in a game, like in a basketball game, like it doesn't stop, right? Like if you make a mistake, or if you forget something, like you just have to improvise and you have to be flexible. So I would just say that's probably the biggest lesson that I've had, is, and applied to my life, is you can't, like, it's very rare that you get to like sit in whatever it is that you're doing, like for an extended period of time, right? Like I'm not saying you can't be with your feelings. But it's more about like, how do you respond to something that's happened? Because you're not always in control of those things and those events.
And I love what you're sharing there, right? Like you talked about a couple of words, and what I heard from you again was the power of being adaptable, right? And if we've ever needed a reminder, I think the last 2.5 years of this interesting time in human history has reminded us the power of being adaptable, right? Focusing on things we can control.
Absolutely.
And I love how you then followed it up with this idea of, yes, the power is always yours. You have the ability to choose. Again, there's that power of free will. But, in those situations, are you going to, and the easy thing I have found from my lived experience, it's easy to react, but can you intentionally respond, right? To maybe a challenging situation, some adversity. So I'm curious, was there a coach or mentor or someone important in your life that helped teach you the importance of, learning to be adaptable, learning to respond, in the game of life?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at different parts of my life, I've had different mentors, but I would just say my parents have been, the rocks that of my life, right? I've been very fortunate to be raised by two parents, and my older sister and I have had them in largely a part of our lives, in a very intimate way, right? Like, I grew up living with them in a 2-parent household, and I went to college only 2 hours away. So, and then even when I was playing overseas, like I was fortunate to have them come visit me at least once a year. So I just feel like the consistency of that, like I really do believe we're products of our environment. And yeah, I mean, I think they've been through a lot in their lives too. Like, my mother transitioning to live in the US, my father, kind of growing up and having to take care of his family. I just think they've always responded well to the things that have happened in their lives, and and raising us. So they've definitely been, I think, the largest influences on me and my sister.
I love that. I love how you remind me of, again, the power of the environment, right? And it's interesting that you share again the influence that your parents have played in your life, because I'm still reminded of some of the trips where we came to visit you and your family. And I always remember being a kid that I always enjoyed it. Like I still have these very fond memories. Like I still remember going to a farm by your house and getting these ice cream sandwiches and things like that, where it's just like all these beautiful memories. And it just always seemed like whenever we came to visit you, it was always like fun. It was always joyful. There's just like, I don't know, the beauty of life just seemed to come to the surface.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, is like, we just kind of enjoyed where we were. Like we didn't grow up going out to eat a lot, or like, it was it was kind of like what was in your neighborhood, and, the people that were close to you. And yeah, I think my family, like, we all have our struggles growing up, and the things that, exist within each of our families. But I do think for the most part, we've had like a really amazing upbringing and
Hmm.
environment.
Hmm. Okay. So as I was mentioning earlier, your story has been unique in the fact of, you're playing, right? You played at your alma mater, you're coaching there now. And I know that, I remember as I was saying, I watched this video where you said you're kind of at your crossroads, your last year of playing, where you're kind of determining like, what's the next step? I'm curious, what was the inspiration to continue to explore this basketball journey once you were done playing?
Yeah, I think it was so my undergraduate degree was in economics, and I thought I would like be a trader or like do something in finance. And I just realized I wasn't ready to do that like once I was done playing. And I'd always enjoyed the relationship of like teaching through sport and coaching through sport. So I realized like when I was done playing, I was like, okay, I want to be close to my family, to be present in the things that are happening in their lives. And then also like, I think that would be a nice transition for me. It's like, this might be the time to try it, right? It's like, while I know I'm done with my playing career, but I'm still very passionate about the sport and the things, and also just, paying it forward to what the sport has given me. That was a big part of it, honestly, for me. I thought it was a nice transition, and
Mhm.
here I am still doing it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I'm curious, what has it been like? Because, before, coming back to your alma mater, you spent some time coaching at Princeton. For us here in Canada, these Ivy League schools are sort of viewed as, on the pinnacle, right? Where you get this blend of these highly academic of excellence building, but then you also get this, highly athletic, excellence
Mhm.
um, sort of environment as well. What has that been like navigating, working with highly ambitious, highly driven, highly coachable, and open-minded young people, not only academically, but athletically as well? What has that process been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the people that we get to work with, the young people that we get to work with, I mean, they're amazing individuals and human beings. I think it's a blessing. It really is, that we get this opportunity. I would just say, their drive to succeed in life is something that you don't really need to like pull that out of them, right? Like, I feel like they come here to be challenged. I think that's one of the gifts of going to an Ivy League school. It's like, you don't really get to walk through it or crawl through it. You're kind of, like you're sort of drug along a little bit, but like you have to, if you embrace that, I think the process is really special. And the benefits are immense. So yeah, it's something I only know this, right? In coaching, like I've coached young athletes in grassroots level, like, high school and even younger, but um, this is the athlete that I've identified with the most since I was a player. And then also,
Mhm,
since I've been coaching, I've been only at two Ivy League schools.
mhm.
Um, and I think there's, benefits, and I also think that sometimes the overachiever in the athlete tends to sometimes clog their thought process and decision making, which, I don't know if others deal with that as much, but
Yeah.
that's, there's positives and areas that you got to help and work them through. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it's been really, really enjoyable working with this level of athlete.
And I love how you're sharing that, everyone has parts of their life that, they have these gifts, these talents, their abilities that allow them to achieve great things. But
Hmm.
then on the other side of the coin, they have these other areas of their life that sometimes those edges need to be rounded a little bit, right? We
Hmm.
need to tone it
Hmm.
down. So I find what I really heard from you again is highly ambitious athletes and coaches. Again, it's harnessing that ambition, that drive, that coachability, and just sort of making them realize that, the importance of being present about here and the
Hmm.
now. And that's really all you can control.
Absolutely, absolutely. It really is. It truly is, and I think that's sometimes like they're so goal oriented, and I think that's hard to keep you present focused, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, but again, I can relate to it in some
Yeah.
ways, which I do think is what bonds us and makes it a special relationship.
Okay. You brought up an interesting idea, right? Where I'm a firm believer, again, just from my lived experience working with other high performers, that high performers have this delicate balance between being, like you said, goal oriented, but process driven.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you helped your athletes, your coaches to do, or a message you truly preach at Columbia that allows them to focus on the here and the now, to focus on the process, and a cliche in sport, to trust the process?
Yeah, you're speaking like a true Philadelphia Sixers fan. Yeah, no, we talk about details all the time, and just like not skipping steps and not taking shortcuts, right? So
Yeah.
for us, and also I think one thing that's really important is like establishing like the culture of your program, and that's something that we've worked really, really hard here to do, and a huge credit to my staff for like just diving in with me, because I think instead of being outcome driven, you have to be response driven, right, to be really good. And that's the same thing as saying trust the process, or it's all in the details, or it's it's all about gaining inches, not miles. And again, not skipping steps. So we try to have our players understand that, right? It's not about winning games, it's about championship culture. Right. So if we have championship culture and we live like above the line of like, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, or below the line, then the winning will be a byproduct of that. So we talk a lot about our value system, our culture, how we treat each other, and we kind of lay that groundwork day one or day zero even, and just talk about it every day with them. So it's not something that is given to them once and then we just throw it at them when we're frustrated. No, it's this is something that's an everyday thing. And again, just like helping them understand like a high level of attention to detail is really important in executing a game plan.
I love that you share that, right? Like you said, there's lots of, I think that's one of the beauties of sports, right? Every coach has those cliches that remind. But what I really heard from you again was the power of consistency, right? That when you take consistent and focused action, and sometimes they are mundane tasks, but it's understanding the byproduct is, the number on a scoreboard, the wins, the championships. But again, it's really, like you said, just immersing yourself in those consistent focus reps and sets.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's consistency. I mean, that's really what it is. It's like consistency and executing based on that, but no, it's interesting. You got to keep them on track. That's and yourself, I think it's all about the monotony. If you get really good at the monotony of doing something, it pays off dividends.
I often like to share, it's interesting, right? The power of consistency, right? And it's understanding that you always have that choice, right? Like you can choose to take that action or not. It's always up to you. What I find in the message that always seems to resonate is, I said, that's the separator, that consistency, that focus is the difference between someone who has earned confidence versus false confidence. And I often like this false confidence as this idea of this fake it or till you make it. And last week when I was speaking with our team on our provincial team, it was this idea of false confidence, fake it till you make it, gets exposed during times of adversity, like you talked about, right? When the scoreboard is not in your favor. But true earned consistency, earned confidence, which again is through that consistent and focused repetition, is actually what allows you to navigate your way through the adversity, the challenges, and the obstacles.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes, and I share this with our team often. Pat Summitt said this to many of her players, and Candace Parker said it on one of her podcasts not recently, but when I heard it, and it was handle failure as you handle success. Right. And so to me, that's the same message. It's, you can never really get too high. You can never get really too low, and you can't, you just got to make sure you handle all situations the same way, so that you're not over or underreacting to something, and you're able to handle that adversity when it comes, right? And process it and learn from it. Yeah.
Okay. I know before we chatted coming on, and you talked about this idea, the ability to, again, come back to that word, responding. I find we're in an interesting time and age with young athletes, because there is more awareness around this idea of like wellness, right? I know mental health, sometimes everything gets lumped into mental health. So I'm curious, like, you've been coaching for a while. Have you noticed a change in the way you approach athletes, how you work with athletes one-on-one, with wellness being such at the forefront of people's minds right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is one of the things that with generational differences, right? Like, it's just like, oh, well, this is how I experience things, or this is, I never would have done that in this situation, but that's not their reality. So I just think accepting that as a number one baseline is like, we're having two very different college experiences in different times of, with social issues and everything that's happening, a pandemic. So I think just one, constantly like educating ourselves as leaders and coaches to understand what they're going through and ask questions and lead with curiosity. I really think that's really important. And something I've been trying to be way more intentional about is doing exactly that. Just asking them, how do you feel, or what, tell me more, what, share, can you share with me? Do you mind sharing more with me? Asking their permission for things. And just like also giving them a safe space to voice how they're feeling without even being prompted. I think that's the hardest thing to achieve right now, right? Is you have a coach, you have an authority figure, you have your professor, you have your whatever, somebody is superior to you, is like, can I voice my opinions unfiltered to you in a respectful way, of course, but I think that's something we're always trying to achieve is like, well, what are they thinking? What are they feeling, as a staff? And just getting them to be really honest with us and transparent about what they need as we're dealing with wellness. But I do think we've been trying really hard to pull in all the resources that, we're blessed with here at Columbia to make sure they understand, like, they have a team of people around them that are here to support them. And that's the biggest goal is like, I might not know everything, but guess what? We have this person that does, or we have this resource, so I think that's part of the education process. And we've been very mindful of, this is a different athlete right now. This is a different athlete than when I was growing up, even 5 years ago. It's been very, even the time that I've been here, right? The classes, the teams that I've inherited to the teams now that I'm coaching, it's two very different athletes.
I love everything you're sharing. Again, it speaks to you as a servant-based leader, that open-mindedness, that coachability, which allowed you to achieve great success as an athlete, how it's transitioned into your role as a coach and as a mentor. And I love the simplicity, how you talked about it's just challenging yourself to come with an open mind, right? To really demonstrate a curious mind, to ask questions. And what I heard from you there was, again, the ability to ask curious questions allows you to gain greater understanding. And through that greater understanding, you're better able to create that bridge of trust with your athletes, create that safe space. So kudos to you, coach.
No, I mean, it's because I have great people around me. Like, I would not be able to do and grow as a leader without the support that I have and the people in my life and my staff and my administration. Like, I've been lucky to be able to grow and learn from my mistakes. Like, I made a lot of mistakes. So, I've been lucky to be able to grow in this environment and in this program, with people that support me. So it's been a big part of it.
Okay. I like it. So I'm curious, one thing I mentioned to you before going on, I think it's, again, everyone's journey is unique, but I love the fact of, I do feel that, again, being an Asian American in a sport that, typically isn't prevalent in Asian Americans, and then being now coaching, I'm curious, what has it been like through your experience navigating maybe a path that hasn't been as well developed in the past?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't even think when I do things, like, I'm very aware of who I am and where I came from, but I'm not always, I'm not putting that out there and being like, well, I'm this person and like, look at me. Like, and not that people do that, but I'm just saying that for me, I've never really stepped back and thought about it until very recently, when like I've been asked to do various things, or I was awarded an Asian American Association Coach of the Year award. Like, I was talking about my path as a first, like an Asian American woman, one of the first to do what I'm doing. And I guess for me, it's just an amazing platform that I have. And I'm just trying to be more in tune and aware of it to give back and provide and pave a way for the younger generation, saying, hey, you can do this too. Because it always takes you to have role models and mentors and people to look up to, but people that look like you doing the things you're doing. So if anything, that's what it's really allowed me to lean into is, and also like, we have various Asian American players on our team, and I've hired Asian American staff members. So like, I'm also in tune with that as providing the opportunity for other people so that they can grow in this industry if that's what they so desire. But yeah, it's been, like, I've been lucky. I haven't faced a ton of discrimination in my coaching career, which I've been lucky, but I mean, I would say I've faced more as being a young female, because I don't know if people necessarily
Okay.
identify with me as an Asian American immediately,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that's also a unique dynamic, is like my identity isn't something that's necessarily like visually associated with, right?
Yeah.
So that's a whole different side of it. But yeah, I would say like that's the hardest thing, is being a female, and yet a minority Asian American female in this profession is very unique.
Mm. Okay. So I'm curious again from your experience, and again, I love the humbleness there, like that idea, like I've just done what I've done, like this has just been my journey, and now it sounds like you've become more aware about, hey, I do have a platform to elevate, to empower others, to give people hope for potential pathways for them.
Sure.
I'm curious, we're in a unique time right now where these conversations around equity, diversity, inclusion are at the forefront, right? Like people are looking, you see it even at the professional level,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like you see it happening there. I'm curious, what do you see as being the next logical step? Because again, I'm a firm believer that everything great is in theory. Like I think people have the best intentions, but what is that one to where we can actually start to create more opportunities and give, and really, I don't know, just.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think there's a lot of, I think could be a lot of potential answers for that. I think the best thing that has happened is, even if there hasn't been as much action that we all hope to see, there's way more conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion than we've ever had in sports, at the university levels, at administration levels, like at any sort of business level. And so to me, I'm like, at least it seems like right now there's, again, conversations. We just need to continue having those, but making sure that there's people in positions of leadership that can actually do good with that. I think that's the next step, is like holding people accountable, right? Which that is a skill that is extremely underrated and hard. It's difficult. So that's what people like me, or people like my athletic director in our business, like those are the things, like I have to be able to hold him accountable, because that's what he's saying he needs, right? And that's the same thing I would ask of my staff, is to hold me accountable to the things that I'm saying. So I think it's important, because it's not always going to be coming from the top, because the top is handling a lot of things. It has to help. You need a support system to ensure that you can follow through with the things you say you're going to do. But I think we're heading in a better direction. I just don't think we've quite taken all of the action we need to. And that's the other part of this, is you can't fully fledge a plan without trying things, right? Like, it's like, I think people so want it to be perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. You just got to start, like, all right, we're going to try this. We're going to try this, like throw out ideas, and then let's see what happens and how people respond. And not being afraid to fail in a very delicate space.
Yeah, I love, again, just the simplicity, right? Like it's releasing this illusion of perfection.
Yep.
It's acknowledging that change isn't always easy. Change is very often very messy, but it's just giving permission people to try. And it was interesting, as you said that, it reminded me of a story I read of Steph Curry. And it probably, I don't know if it prompted just because your basketball background, but he said what made Steph Curry such a great shooter is not the fact of what he did, but it's the fact of his willingness to still shoot. Even if he misses the first 10, he's still going to take the 11th shot. And it's funny that it reminds you of, like, simply what you said, like you have to be willing to take imperfect action, because that's really where change starts.
Totally. And that's a great analogy. I mean, you got to keep trying. It's like, and even if something worked, it might not work all the time. Like there's got to be more ways, and you just got to keep adding to that, to your bag. And this, that's essentially what I think. Yeah, we just need to keep doing it. And again, positions of leadership need people to hold them accountable. I think that's the other part of this.
And what I'm reminded of is positions of leadership, again, bringing that diversity of thought, even at the bare minimum, right? Just openness to diversity of thought is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, like it's so often that, I forget who I was talking to, and they were saying like the board was making a decision for like how some company would like operate, but the company's demographic was extremely diverse from a racial and ethnic background. And the board was like very white and very affluent. And it's like they're making decisions for how this in a younger generation, right? The generation separated. It's just, I think you have to start having people at the table, even just to provide feedback and input and listen about what's important right now. And that's like kind of what we were talking about with our athletes, is like, I have to be more curious. I need to know what they're thinking, what they need too, and not just assume that this is what's best for them, or this is what's best for them to perform at the levels that we need them to.
Mm. So I'm curious as you say that, right? Again, that openness to diversity, it reminds me of this idea of like, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, so we should be listening twice as much as we talk. I'm curious, do you think that from your experience, does that wisdom, the ability to ask questions and listen more, do you think that is something some people just inherently do? Or do you think it's something that you just develop over time with more lived experience and just more wisdom, more calm and confidence in your own skin?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think some people are naturally just better listeners than others. But I also think that like that, I can honestly say I've learned to be a better listener and leader that way. Like, and I think more just like leaning into it and tapping into it and understanding it's really important. Because I think too, as a young leader, like speaking from personal experience, like you're trying to listen, but you're also trying to do. And like, you just feel like sometimes you have so much to do. And now, like 6 years later, looking back on when I first took this job, I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have done things differently or listened to this person or asked for advice, but you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so hard when you're headstrong, like I am, like to be told something, like, I don't know if I would have listened to myself now, even if I would have been able to fast forward 6 years. So, yeah, I think it's a learned skill over time for sure. But I do think naturally some people are just gifted with that. And, are able to connect with people better that way because they listen to understand and not listen to respond.
It's interesting that you share that, right? And I love, again, your openness to just say, hey, this is lived experience. I've learned, again, that Nelson Mandela quote, like, I've had some great wins. I've had some opportunities to learn. That's the game of life. I'm curious, working with high performers, I find it's this interesting balance between acknowledging that you are doing the best you can in this moment based on your past experience and your current level of awareness. But it's also understanding that you're only scratching the surface of what's possible. Is that something that you feel high performance, especially working in the environment you work on? Is that something that, you can teach people to do? Or is that just, again, through lived experience, just learning to sort of walk the line a little bit more, to be, to love yourself tough, in other words?
Yeah. I think now that's tough. I think through experience and the experiences I've had, I feel like I had a lot of change and adversity in my like college through professional career. And I was able to learn a lot through that time. Various different head coaches. I think that was like a large reason for me to be able to like handle change very well, right? I feel like too right now, not that people are averse to change, but I think it really is your product of the things that you get to experience. You can read about something, you can learn about something, but until you're like in it and living it, and I think it's really hard to be like, yeah, that I relate to that, or right. Or until you like try something. So I think that's the other thing, is like you have to force experience sometimes, or like put yourself in that situation to have that experience to really understand like how it affects you and what you can learn from it, and be opening to that. So I would just say like it's hard to be tough with yourself, right? Like, but I do feel like there's like a very fine line of like the growth zone, right? Like there's your comfort zone, and then like there's your learning and growth zone, and it's like this small line, and then there's the like point of no return. If you cross that line, you're like, it's almost like self-destruction, right? So because you're just too hard on yourself, or too hypercritical, or you can't handle it. And I feel like you only develop that if you push your boundaries, right? Or you only find that sweet spot if you push your boundaries. So, but I do think that's something that's hard to teach. I think you can say it, but I think it takes a coachable human being and somebody that's willing to like really learn about themselves.
I love the simplicity of what you're talking about, right? It's about consistently just pushing the edges of that comfort zone, right? And just being open that there's going to be ebbs and flows with every journey, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. So coach, I have one last question for you, and I just want to be respectful of your time. So I'm curious, like, what is a piece of advice that you would offer yourself? Let's say it's, it's you're 10 years old, you're maybe going through a challenging time. What's that piece of advice you would offer yourself?
Yeah, I would think it's kind of what I said this already, but like that quote, like I really try to live by this is like handle failure as you handle success. I would
Mm,
just say, especially in like my younger self, like I hated to lose. I still hate to lose. I'm such a sore loser. Dear Lord, my team can tell you that I'm such a sore loser. Like, and I'll like dissect everything we did after a loss. And not that I
yeah,
won't after a win, but I'm just like, you just walk a little lighter on your feet and
yeah,
So I would just say like, don't like take it at face value and try to get the same lessons you would from winning, right?
mhm,
And then too, like I would just say that is, and also to pair with that is like focus on your response and how the things that are in your control and way less about the things that happen to you, right? It's like,
mm,
because when you're a kid, like I just feel like there's a different energy that you have. And if you can learn to roll with the punches a little bit more and make adjustments on the fly versus, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. What do I do? Don't stand frozen just because
yeah.
something's happening.
Again, I love the simplicity of what you share. And as you did that, I just thought this picture of watching my kids learn to walk, right? Is very often, when they're
Mhm.
learning to walk, they fall down. I mean, eh, so many times,
Yeah,
but they don't create a story of why they can't walk or and they just get up and they just keep going. And eventually what happens is, they learn to walk and then they learn to run. So it's just, again, going back to that childlike curiosity and
yeah,
just embracing the ebbs and flows of life.
totally. It's such a great, I love when people bring that up. Like I do think childlike curiosity is so important. And like just think like a kid again. Like sometimes we don't have to overcomplicate stuff. Like I feel like that's a very common problem as we get older. Is like it's like just how would I have handled this if I know have no context for what this is?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the easiest way to solve this problem?
Yeah. Keep it simple, simple. That's one of
Yep.
the things I like to remind myself. Keep it simple, simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious, Coach. Is there anything that we can do to help or be of service to you right now? Is there anything that we can support you in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think just continuing to do what you're doing, JT. Like, honestly, like I love that you're giving a voice to coaches and people in sport, and that you're really passionate about this too, because I think it's important to get people's messages out there and also just create conversations for future generations to understand like these are opportunities available to you, and it doesn't have to be this perfect path of, oh, I was a professional athlete and that's why I became a coach. Or everybody has a different story, and just
Yeah.
continuing to share those stories. So that's what you can do for me and for the people coming after us.
Awesome. I love it. I just had this idea. Imagine we had access to some of these great, these
Totally.
conversations, right? Like,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It was a very different time.
yeah. Well, Coach, I really want to take a moment just to acknowledge you, Megan. I want to acknowledge you for the great daughter you are, the great sister, the great teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I've really come to appreciate from this conversation is just how calm and confident you are. Like just your ability to, when I'm asking you, a curious question, you take a moment to actually stop and think about it and respond in a thoughtful and inspiring way. So I just want to thank you for sharing your gift with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's great to reconnect with you. And I wish you all the best in all this, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So folks, as I remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates great results. Coach drops so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations that is, if it resonated with you, to share it with a loved one, a friend, a teammate, someone who you feel needs to hear this message. Because the more people that we have understanding these simple ideas, the brighter this world can be. As always, I look forward to having these conversations with you again next week. Have a blessed rest of your day.